add on to what Christina was sharing about how we as women, we do have like a natural tendency to take care and to nurture those around us. Well, I do agree. I also see that a reason why there are women in this world who, for example, will harm their kid or kill their kid is because they have suppressed maybe their own self-love and their own self-nurturing, so they're unable to care for another. So I've also been looking at like the complete opposite of like the total suppression of femininity or self-nurturing and self-love for oneself. You know, how do people or women get to such extremes where they end up harming their own children?
Yeah, that's a really good point. What I see there is that when the nurturing, the giving, the being in service of others is a giving away of self, where you just completely disregard yourself and becomes about the other, where now the other is draining you and you're blaming them when in fact you're doing it to yourself through not standing as yourself, within yourself, serving yourself first. So then you get the spite and the outbursts and the blame and the anger towards others as if they're the ones, it's the problem.
So these qualities of like being a nurturer or a caregiver, if you can't do that for yourself, you're not going to be able to do that for anyone else. You know, I've experienced women in my family that give, and they're absolutely just wrecked, and like they're so bitter because, you know, they're coming from a point of, I give so much of myself and I don't get anything in return. And the point that's missing is, well, you're not giving to yourself first. You know, it's like you're taking what you have and just saying, well, I have to give it away and I have to do this for everyone else because that's my role. When again, that's not considering yourself and the fact that you have to start with yourself, in taking care of yourself and nurturing yourself and knowing yourself.
I would like to go back to a point that you mentioned before, Kristina, about the feminine being a little bit like all round in a way. That's definitely also how I experience it. Like it's sort of like being more able to connect to the different layers, or see different dimensions, or from within different angles, and sort of like that you're sort of, for some it might seem like you're scattered or all over the place, but actually it's like you maybe have like a bigger picture, or like you're all encompassing in a way. Like you know, you will have these men that say like, oh, she's just I don't understand what she's saying, because like you're maybe explaining something that is coming from another dimension that then what like logically makes sense in a way. What I was going to say there is like, it's like this depth also with connection that I guess that women can have with each other, and how that then can like, if there is a conflict in the female relationships, that like now you have like a deep connection with someone where you know them on a much deeper level. So if you're going to be spiteful, it's going to be like really consequential in comparison to if you would just be very like sort of more straight to the point and like just have the surface connection with each other or something. You have not much against the other person in a way.
I just want to touch on the first one where you were talking about how women are well-rounded in terms of looking at things from lots of different perspectives and seeing the nuances and whatnot. The way I see that is like men are the structure. I'm just going to give an example of how the two can kind of complement each other, where it's like men are the structure. So it's like, let's just say, for example, you have a plan to drive to a lake or whatever with, man and woman are driving to a lake, and the man's like, okay, we're going to load the car, we're going to take this route, and we're going to get there at this time, and that's like the structure. Whereas the women can then come and like color in the structure with, hey, let's make this pit stop along the way and look at this, detour we can take to visit this garden. And on its own, this is how the two can kind of, I think one individual can have both qualities, but also if you're more of the feminine kind of wild, expressive, all over the place, then you can have in your life people that are very structured and work together to create something that's even better than one of the other individuals could have done.
Yeah, it's like it can really work against each other or just make both part and the whole much stronger.
Yeah.
That's a great example, Kim, because I never really looked at it that way, and it simplifies the points for me actually, because I can relate very much actually to like having the set time we're going to get there, and this is the route we're going to take, in a very like structured boom, boom, boom. And just in this last year, I've noticed more of, which the word for me, I guess, is creativity, that has come up that I never had a relationship with ever. And so it's like, okay, looking at creativity and what does it mean to be creative and to explore and to play and to like kind of go with something without needing a plan necessarily. Like you can have maybe a vision or an idea, but just kind of letting things like flow out, like that is definitely a feminine expression. I think that I've only started to kind of explore within myself, and it's been really cool because I never really experienced that ever. Just like, you know, the word femininity didn't really exist for me. Creativity never really existed for me either. So I can see now for myself in this moment, based on your example, that that's kind of where I am learning about the femininity or the more feminine side of myself. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes an amazing process of self-discovery, because it's like that's the fun part, you know, the creation. You have like the outline of the drawing and the black and white, and it's like, how do you want to color it in? How do you want to decorate it, or what expressions do you want to bring through?
It's really interesting actually, because I peg it to my partner being an artist really kind of opened me up to that world of what it means to be creative. You know, so it's funny because it took a man to show me a little more femininity.
Yeah, but that's totally, like, I can relate to that too, of being a structured one, and sometimes it's the men in my life that teach me how to be more flexible and creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can also relate to it.
I was just going to share something like that too, because when it comes to travel, I'm the planner. I'm the one who always wants to have a plan. My husband is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
And when I started to step back and allow him to kind of take the lead when it came to, you know, what we're going to do for a day, and when we're traveling, I also started to see more expressions, such as flow, just you know, like just chill out kind of thing. When I started to step back and allow him to kind of express himself and us together. I know for me that all the motherly figures in my life, you know, my mom, her mom, my friends' moms, they were always like on the bossy side. So that's how I kind of grew up seeing women, or, you know, that's an expression to exude when you become older. But I also question if you grew up with a motherly figures who are, you know, submissive, meek, if that's then something you would also become, you know?
Yeah. I guess it could be all potentials, all potential playouts from, you know, sometimes we rebel to our parents, sometimes we just follow along. You know, I think it depends on the individual.
Because I wanted to kind of go back to a point that we touched on, which was the pleasing, giving self away, feeling that you're giving too much of yourself, because I think that's a really important point for women who tend to be the caregivers in the family and sometimes end up taking care of the entire family, including the grown adults. So, and then they end up, as Kristina said, wrecked and just a mess. And so I was looking at that because I have it in me also to be of service. And that's something that I've recently owned, where I realize that it's not a bad thing to enjoy serving others, you know, cooking and tidying and literally serving a meal, or just being of support. And I've had to find a way to live that doesn't give too much of me away. And I had an example recently that happened, just because these types of things that come up, it's like, it's easy to say, give yourself or be of service to others, or take care of others without giving yourself away, or with giving to yourself first. But it's really difficult if you've never done that before to figure out how to actually do it. And so I was looking at a recent example in my life where I'm living in a household with quite a few people, and a couple of things happened at once. People were sick, babies were sick, where nobody was in a position to tidy and do dishes like they normally would. And I saw this was going to happen, and I decided within myself, okay, every morning I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do all the dishes. I don't care whose they are or how many there are. And I was like, okay, how am I going to do this in such a way that's sustainable, where I don't feel like I'm being walked on, where I don't feel like I'm, the one doing all the cleaning. And so the first point was to make it a point of decision. Like, I'm deciding, yes, I'm going to do this. The second point was, how could I make this a benefit to me? And what I did was I made a whole morning routine where I integrated now doing all these dishes into my morning routine, in a routine that I was already working on, that was to just support, getting enough sleep, waking up at a certain time, doing things in the morning, being active, productive, whatever. And so I just worked doing the dishes into my routine, so that every morning when I woke up to a pile of dishes, I had no thoughts of, oh my God, like, look at all these dishes. I can't believe no one else is doing them. It was literally doing it for me, even though the action was doing it for everybody. Mm-hmm. So that's just an example I wanted to share of how in small, simple moments, this can be lived out throughout the day in ways to please and service and give to others, but making sure that you do it for yourself first.
That's also where, in a way, the male expression comes through, with like making it like the decision and the sort of what did you say, to make it a habit? No,
I just said integrate it into your into a routine, or
into your routine. Yeah, because I see that as a very like male-ish type of
yeah, it could be.
And that there they come together in a way, so it's like it's supporting it, actually, like it grounds it. It's not, it doesn't have to be emotional anymore. Like, you don't have to go all around in your mind about shit in energies because you're emotional, because it's just a simple practical point.
Because I think oftentimes women just put everything on their shoulders because they just think that it's their responsibility to do everything, especially when it comes to the house and children. It's just like, that's just what you do. And it does create resentments and anger, because it's not really, like you gave an example of, clearly defined within ourselves of why we're doing that. And for me, how I kind of approached that situation was, I'm able, if I'm here and I don't like the way something looks, and I want it to be different, then I should be the one to change that. Obviously, you can work with other people that you live with to make sure that everyone's contributing and has that point of, we all live here, let's work together. But if it's an issue within myself, that's my problem. That's not really anyone else's problem. And so for me, it was a point of how I redefined that in terms of, I'm just capable of cleaning, so I can clean. And if I don't like the way something is, then I can change it. It was just that point of, I'm an able body, and I don't need to look for an excuse to victimize myself and blame another person for, putting it all on me. I can just actually, I can still do everything I need to do without having any friction within me about that.
Yeah, and I think that I'm able is a really important point, because sometimes we're not able. And even during this whole dishes experiment, I got a migraine and I could not do it. And I saw it in me wanting to still do it, because now it had become like a mission, but I was no longer able. Mm-hmm. And that's when it's important to communicate to others, because then if you actually push beyond your physical or mental limitations, and that's when you do start giving too much of yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's important to develop the voice and communication to tell other people in your environment, right now I need some help with this, I'm not able. And then you get through whatever the not able point is, and you come back, and there's no accumulated emotional reactions from having given too much or done too much, because you actually took care of yourself in that moment where you needed the care. Mm-hmm. But I find that it was hard for me to ask for support, and that's something that we all need to be able to do and work on if we can't do it.
Yeah, and it doesn't even necessarily come up. Like, we don't even think about it, you know.
Yeah.
We don't even consider that we can do that.
This is something that we don't learn about in school, is how to really speak up for ourselves, how to ask for help, you know, these basic life skills that are actually very crucial to living well and to care for ourselves. It's not really existent in schools.
Yeah, to even recognize that you need care. Like, where do you learn that? You know, we live in a society where it's rewarded to give and work beyond your means and your physical capabilities, and not take any sick days from work, and always be early, and, you know, put your family and your life second, and that stuff is rewarded. So where do you learn about your own limitations and how to recognize them?